I had realized that I had some sort of inner guidance system. Some people call it intuition. Around my mid 30s, I found that somehow this had been buried. And as life progresses, you take on a load of responsibilities and all sorts of things, and that creates fear. I wasn't happy where I was, and I felt that I need to do something different, but I didn't know what. And I was just searching for how to get back to this inner guidance, to have this inner knowing and security to just know this is my path and I'm going there.
Welcome to the Infinite Life with Katische Haberfield. I'm a quantum soul therapist, and I'd like to take you on a transformative journey exploring the mysteries of the soul, past lives, and infinite existence. Through over 60 regression case studies, mediumship interviews, and fascinating discussions with interesting human beings, uncover what it means to be a human facing duality on Earth whilst embracing the true nature of reality, non-duality, and unconditional love. Welcome back to the Infinite Life podcast with me, your host, Katische Haberfield. And today, coming all the way from Germany, we have Dr. Susanne Kurz. Susanne, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Katische. Thank you very much for having me.
You're most welcome. Dr. Susanne Kurz is a German scholar, creator, life coach, author, and speaker. She's worked almost for 20 years as a university researcher and teacher on the history of Persian culture in Iran, Middle Asia, and India before embarking on a new adventure. In her second life as a coach and hypnotist, she started to use trance states to channel parables and messages, whilst also supporting clients who feel stuck and want to reconnect with their inner guidance or simply feel calmer and happy where they are. One thing that has never changed is her eager interest in people and their stories and her passion for breaking through limitations. You have quite the academic background, yet your books and your current work use the totally different side of the brain. So your career has been the logical and rational side of the brain, and yet now you've moved into the creative side of the brain. And so what I've discovered through talking to you off the podcast is that you have used the trance state to do this. So I'm wondering if we could just understand how you transitioned from the left side of the brain to the right-hand side of the brain.
Yeah, it's not quite as clear-cut as it might appear, because I've been writing and doing creative writing from pretty much from my 13th year onwards. But obviously, as you already stated, I've been focusing for a long time on the rational part and on academic writing, which is not, I wouldn't say completely different, but it's a different kind of writing. And now I've switched over again. And one of the reasons actually I did the transition is that I felt like there was a part of me that wasn't being expressed enough in academia, or didn't have the space to be expressed enough in academia. One of many reasons. It's very complex. And what I use the trance state for is that, again, is something I have had all of the time. So when I learned hypnosis, I found that I actually have enjoyed trance states all my life, and I really love trance states. And it's no wonder that I've been drawn to hypnosis, but I didn't know that. And I started to learn hypnosis and to consciously use the trance state, first of all, because I had realized that I had some sort of inner guidance system. Some people call it intuition. It's also a matter we could discuss for hours, I think. And I had that for most of my very important decisions in life, to the point that I used to say I've never really made a big decision, because by the time a decision was imminent and was necessary to make, it was already clear to me. And around my mid 30s, I found that somehow this had been buried under a load of fears and issues and real life things. And as life progresses, you take on a load of responsibilities and all sorts of things, and that creates fear. And I found that I just couldn't reach that, because I knew I wasn't happy where I was anymore, and I felt that I need to do something different, but I didn't know what. And I was just searching for how to get back to have this inner guidance, to have this inner knowing and security, to just know this is my path and I'm going there. And that's how I used to be. I don't look right, I don't look left, I don't have any backup plans, I go this way. And that's what I was looking for. And I found that trance states are really helpful for connecting back with that, especially when your rational mind goes crazy and comes up with all sorts of things that then induce fear and block you, essentially. And that's the first step. The first thing I consciously used trance states for on myself. And then the next step was that I actually found that I call it channel stories, little stories. And it actually was in a session with you. I had a reading with you in, I think, summer 2022 or something, when I was trying to find the right way, because I had already found that the business I had started, in the way I had started it, didn't really work for me. And you told me that this is something that's on my path, or something I might consider. And because I had this prior experience and love for creative writing, I really liked that idea. And so I tried a bit if I can do automatic writing or something. I started to test things, but for a couple of months, nothing happened and it didn't work. And then I had a breakthrough, and I found a technique that worked for me. And then it started coming. So I had, I think, 77 of these little stories, these parables, by the time I decided that I would select some and put them in a book. And that's essentially a book you can see here behind me.
And I just want to pause there. I think that's really important to point out to people, that just because somebody might say to you, I see you having the ability to write or movies, or you've got this creative outlet, doesn't mean that, boom, it's going to happen straight away. You have to find the technique or the path or the toolkit that's going to help you step into that natural ability, because immediately your anxiety and your fears and your subconscious limiting beliefs will go, gosh, did you really mean that? Was she thinking? And so if somebody tells you something in a reading, it doesn't mean it's going to happen straight away, but it does mean that there's that potential for you there, because they've seen it. And when you're ready to step into it, you will find the way, but it does take trial and error. And so before we go into the parables, the thing that we were talking about in the session that you did with me was very specifically stories in the written and the movie format. And you've got an exciting project in the movie format. So tell us all about that and how that came about and where you're with that. Look at your face straight away, lights up. So
yeah,
and that's the reaction you see as soon as somebody is doing and is making steps towards the path that they're meant to be on. Like, you get the full body shivers. Like, literally, I've got hair standing up on my arms right now, because it's the soul calling. Right. So tell us about the soul calling, and then we'll get back to the parables.
My big project actually is a high fantasy TV series. I've called it Magician's Blood. It's essentially Prince of Persia meets Game of Thrones. And we have flying carpets.
Good, always need a flying carpet.
That's essentially a project that started as a novel concept way back, many years back. And it's interesting to bring it into this session where we are talking about trance states, because I had a quite interesting experience, and I think all the fiction writers know about that. And there are some, I think there are even some scientific explanations for that. But what happens sometimes when you're writing is that the things you're writing take on a life of their own. And what I did all those years back when this started was, it was a writing exercise in fantasy writing, high fantasy writing. And this writing exercise, it was one scene that somehow started to unfold in a different way. So there was suddenly a dynamic between my two main characters in the scene, which are now also main characters in the TV series, that I hadn't really thought of, developed in the scene. It just somehow came to me. And I also had a very interesting experience regarding my main character, because I had an idea how this guy looks and all that, but I had a moment while I was working on this scene, and I could see when the scene developed like that, it was something like something opened up behind it, like when you open a door and you suddenly see a whole flight of stairs and rooms and whatever. You can see a whole building unfolding in front of your eyes. And it was a bit like that I saw, okay, there's more to this. There's a story behind this, and started developing the story. And while I was doing that, one morning when I was in the state between sleeping and waking, when I was waking up slowly, I actually could see this character in front of my inner eye very clearly. And it was so clear that I could actually do a drawing, and not just a front up drawing, which is easy, but it was like a half sideways drawing of this character. And with my very limited skills, I hadn't looked into how to draw back then. I've done that meanwhile, but I still have that little drawing, and it did actually look quite good. I was able to put that on paper, which actually surprised me back then. So that was another thing. So I think there is something at the root of this idea already that started to develop itself. And that's actually more than 10 years back. And that was during the time when I was finishing my PhD dissertation, and was thinking about what else am I gonna do afterwards, and if this academia thing doesn't work out, because before you hand in your PhD dissertation, obviously you don't really know what's going to come out of it. What if you get a good grade? Obviously you can go down the road of academia, but if anything goes wrong, you probably won't fail, but they will give you a grade that tells you clearly, okay, take your PhD and go off university. And I didn't know what's going to be the result there. So I was looking at options for creative writing. And then during the following years, when I actually went deeper into academia and got jobs there and all that, I did that until 2011 or something. And then I got stuck. And the reason I got stuck was that I had the idea that the magic in this world should somehow relate to something in our reality. Obviously, it's not one to one, it's not exactly the same, but it should relate to something in our reality that people could also explore then, something that's actually real, but in the realm of not so proven things, not so scientific things, more spiritual things. And I was just doing my first steps in that direction, and I got stuck because I thought I wasn't. There were other reasons too, which had to do with my method of writing, but because I had done very intuitive writing and not very much planned the structure out. But I felt that I didn't know enough, and I didn't have enough experiences and all that to really do that justice and develop that properly. So I put it down and let it lie there until it raised its head again. And that was in 2019 when I had this idea that why should I go and write a novel and then polish the novel and then publish the novel and then see to it that the novel gets sold, and when it's successful as a novel, then maybe someone is going to make it into a film, when I could as well just turn it into a screenplay right now. And then I went back to my material and found out that this material is too much for a film. And I like TV series more anyway, because I'm very character focused and you can just do much more with characters in a series. And I thought this must be a series.
Interesting.
And so my book would be the first season. And then obviously I have ideas for 2 more seasons. And what it's about is essentially, obviously it's an adventure story. We have a war between 2 kingdoms. We have a main character who has grown up in one of the kingdoms, but is currently ruling the other kingdom, and actually is of mixed heritage. So it's someone who is kind of sitting between 2 stools, and he's not happy in his life for various reasons. And then something happens that pushes him to actually go back to his roots. It's a very risky mission, and it's going to confront the king of the other realm. And the king of the other realm is a magician, and that's a magician realm. And the realm our character is ruling is not a magician realm. Okay, so they think they can't do magic, and they don't do magic, and they fear magic. Because way back a couple of 100 years ago, they were actually a part of an empire of the magicians, and they still have these traditions and things, and they hate magic and they fear magic. It's one of the reasons why our character, who has grown up as a magician and is a magician and has come over to the homeland of his mother and has gotten into a powerful position, isn't happy there, because people really make it hard for him. And we have we have this story where our character goes on a journey which is physically challenging, which is risky, but also something that pushes him into a situation where he has to develop on the inside a lot. And there is also where the spiritual things also come in, aside from the magic. And there are some main themes to it. One is it's about midlife and midlife crisis being a portal to new avenues. So we will break with the rule of your main characters need to be in their 20s or 30s at most.
Good.
And that's because I think I think older characters are hugely underrepresented, although they are so interesting. And
they're far more interesting than young characters, right?
And not only have I been always, it's one of the reasons why I'm very used to getting wounded while watching shows and films, because usually the characters that hook me up, that I am focusing on, that I love watching most, older characters that then at some point get killed or something, and that's because obviously they are not the main characters. I'm used to that. That has been the case since I was little, so that's not something new. But I've also found, once I crossed, I think my mid-30s, so 35, something like that. Once I crossed that age, I started feeling less and less inspired by watching shows and films. And that's actually something I'm really looking for, is to get inspired. It's also one of the reasons why I want to have the magic relate to something real, is because I like to be stimulated and inspired, intellectually stimulated and inspired by fiction, to also do something with it in my own mind, in my own emotions, and then also go and see, if there's something interesting, what can I find out about it? Is that something I can use for myself and for my life? And I felt less and less inspired, because when the main characters are in their early 30s at most, then at some point when you are 38 or something, it gives you the message of, if you are older, then it's all done already. Your life is, you must have found your purpose, and because that's what they go through their journeys, those characters, and then they find their thing, and then they are 25 or 30.
And it doesn't happen like that, does it?
So,
No.
no. And I'm like sitting there 30, 38, 39, 40, and thinking, well, what does it tell me? It's all over. They are not like me. I'm not like them. How? And so I thought, and my experience is that we are just like when we were in our teens. We are just back again at that stage sometimes, not everyone, but sometimes in our early to mid 40s. And then we want to start all over again. And that's what happened to me. And so I wanted to have to account for both. Obviously my characters were not that young right from the beginning, because I have this inclination towards older characters because they're more interesting. But I also thought it's a good thing in a landscape where you have shows like Merlin. There's a show called Merlin, and I was like, hey, I love fantasy. I love saga of Arthur or Arthur. I love Merlin. Merlin is my favorite character. Let's check this out. And what do I find? It's a milksop. And why is that? Because we need to go back to the pre-story of Merlin, because then we can have a young actor playing a young character. Even if we are talking about Merlin, I was like, that's not what I want to see when I want to see Merlin. So
show me the real Merlin. Yeah.
So I think that's essentially a tendency that I found is a bit problematic, or a bit sad, let's say. Not that we shouldn't have young characters. We have young characters also in this show. There's a young generation in it, so there's something for older people and there's something for younger people. We have various love relationships and things, and some are a bit complicated on various levels and in all generations, more or less. We also have an old generation. We have the king, the big antagonist of the magicians, is very old generation. We have another important, powerful person of the older generation. Our main female character is in her mid to late 40s. We have all that. We also have a little boy who, in the future, when we get to season 3, will have a very important role when he is then about 15 or something like that. So we have all sorts of developments in that. So that's one of the important themes. Another theme of it, obviously, is the clash of cultures or the clash of civilizations theme, which is something that's been important for me, obviously, because I come from Islamic studies, essentially. I'm a scholar of the cultural history of the Persian-speaking world during the times of Islam. That's what I've been doing in academia. So I've always been interested in cultures and also in differences of cultures and history and all that. So that's something I bring to the table here. And obviously in our globalized world, I think it's very important to address this clash of civilizations theme and also the intercultural things. So we explore that, and obviously we are aiming at overcoming that. And there's also a spiritual level to that. And one theme is that, let's say, that truths that have been handed down over generations So traditions are not necessarily exactly what we think, not always what we think they are, let's say. Because there happen things to traditions when they are being handed down. So that's the historian in me coming through, obviously. But that means that some things that in this world, as we start, are thought to be clear and obvious and have always been that way and can't be different, will turn out to be not really necessarily. And there's so that's also obviously a factor that is a little bit destabilizing for the traditional order of things. And we have a little bit of a theme of patriarchy and matriarchy, which is because one of our kingdoms has been a matriarchy at some point, still has a strong matrilinear tradition that runs underneath, although they are now ruled by men. And the other kingdom is a very strong patriarchy, and with certain ideas about what women can do and what they can't do. And we have a very interesting young female character on that side, who maybe not in the first season, but in the second season at the latest is going to change some of the ideas that people have there in this world about that.
So where are you at with the development of this concept now and the funding of it and things like that?
Okay, what we currently have is we have a script for a proof of concept short pilot. So that's a shorter version of the pilot film. That is pretty far developed. I have a director who has worked on that with me. She wants to do a few changes on the dialogue still, but I think we are pretty much set with the script. We have a pitch Bible that lays out the pilot in more detail, the full pilot. So we have the full pilot concept, the structure and the content. I also have something written out that isn't quite in the shape for treatment yet, but it's essentially it's a treatment for the pilot. We have the structure for the first season. We have the story arcs, the story arc and the character arcs. We have the division in episodes and all that. So essentially, we know what's going to happen in season one in for the arc. Obviously, there are details that can be changed over time, but that's what we have. And I have my leading man. That's people who have seen the series Vikings, which is a historical drama series, will know him as King Aile of Northumbria. It's a British actor. Ivan Kay is his name. He's quite established and has done a wonderful part in that series, and that's how I found him. So he's going to play our main character, whose name is Artachar. And I know who I want for the female part. I've also talked to this wonderful actress, and she's interested, but we are not there yet where we can bring her on board and announce that. And what we are now looking at, we have a pitch deck and I think I mentioned the pitch Bible, and we also have a pitch deck for presentation now with images of the characters and outlining of the story. For the pitch Bible, we also have some more outlines of the world and all that. That's all with visual materials. And what we are looking at now is to see where we get funding from. So we have an idea how much this is going to cost to have the short pilot. usually you do this of short pilot, or you can call it a webisode or short film or something, in order to show what this is about and to give a feeling of it, and to essentially to show people the potential of it, to then draw in the funding for more, for the whole pilot, for the whole series. But obviously, if we can get in the funding for a whole pilot, we could also go and film the whole pilot right away, because once I put my full focus in, that's something that can happen rather quickly, because I have all the outline, I have all the things. That's not something that needs a lot of time, but that's a point that's still in the works. And if anyone is interested to work with us, to donate, to sponsor also, that would be quite interesting, obviously, to get in touch with me and to talk about it. And then we are going to do a little bit of casting. I think we will do a little bit of casting this year, and hopefully, if we can get in the funds, we could also start shooting towards the end of the year. But first step obviously will be to get the funding, and we can do some casting for the other important characters in this pilot short first. So that's where we stand.
Okay,
And
well, very exciting.
I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a huge thing once we get it going. And I have learned actually during the past couple of years, because I've been at doing the script and doing the Bible and all that for quite a while. And the thing is that I'm more like an impatient person, actually. And I think, I would like to do it right now, but there's still not this and not that. And I've learned that sometimes the reason why something doesn't move is that it's not the time yet. Because my director, who has been attached to this and is quite excited about doing this, also based on our lead, is someone I had on my radar since late 2020. And I talked to her, and I actually originally wanted to get her on board as a producer, because she is really good at not only getting in the money, but also doing a lot of things with little funds. And obviously the skill is on board now too. But the first time I asked her about that, she didn't seem that interested, and said, as a director she can be booked, but as a producer she does more her own things. And then I said, okay, so that's not it now. And for some reason, we were connected on social media, and for some reason last year I reacted to one of her posts and said, that's not exactly what you are asking for, but as I have this project and I would love to have you on board. And then she messaged me and said, what's it about again? And I explained it again. And then she said, hey, wow, that's good and great, and she would love to be a director on it. And now I have her on board. So sometimes, it seems like there are, sometimes also the people may not be at that point yet, or not ready for it yet, that are meant to work with you, or something like that.
Very interesting. And because just looking at the time, we'll move on to the parables now.
That's something I recently discovered, that the visual aspect is really important for me. The writing has always been there, but the fact that I have so much more fun when something visual comes into the equation, that was new to me. And
yes. I won't go into it now, but it also smacks of a past life to me. You have come in with a lot of knowledge about the movie industry, which I know you're a good researcher, but you just said a lot of stuff which would take a very large amount of knowledge to know, suddenly to jump from academia into...
My bridge was actually that when I had this phase in between where I didn't know what to do, and I was with one foot out of academia and with the other foot hanging in the air, I had this work I did on actor fan pages, because essentially I'm running the fan pages of my leading actor for my show. Obviously, and that's actually what brought me to the idea when I had an interaction with him about something different, which got me the idea to, hey, why don't I just do that right away as a film, or then as it happens as a TV show. And I think that was the bridge, because I started doing that and I picked up a lot of things about the industry, obviously from this fringe view. And I think the fringe view is actually helpful. Obviously, I not need a lot of people who are really in it and know everything about it and have that experience. But I think there's something beneficial about it and an advantage about coming from this fringe view, because you can do things differently. You have a different perspective on it, and you don't get knocked down so much from all the knowledge you have about what doesn't work and how things often don't work and all the problems. The thing is, you don't see all the problems at once. That's the first thing the people I have noticed, people in the industry, the first thing they see is all the problems with that. Just getting it made, how hard that will be. And that's something I said, yeah, okay, everything at its time, but I developed the vision first. Yeah. So that's helpful. I think that's helpful if you don't have too much knowledge about what usually doesn't work.
Yes. And now the parables for truth seekers.
The parables.
I think the best way to discuss the parables is actually to read one. But I was hoping you could read us the Sphinx of Light.
The Sphinx of Light. It was a wonderful, clear night in the desert. The dark sky stretched out over the pyramid with a blue shimmer and shining stars, magnificent and magical. A sphinx stood guard in front of the pyramid. A wind picked up and blew sand over to the sphinx. And from the sand, a genie appeared. With a touch, he brought the sphinx to life. It climbed down from its pedestal and followed the genie to the pyramid. The genie opened the pyramid and they entered. Inside, there were many doors and chambers, but at the heart of the pyramid was a real treasure. A light that radiated so much love that even the sphinx, made of stone, felt very soft inside and began to weep with happiness. The light wanted to radiate into the world and touch more hearts, but the pyramid kept it locked up. That is why the genie had brought the sphinx to it. The light could slip into the sphinx, and the sphinx could carry it outside of the pyramid and let the light radiate from its core. If people saw a stone figure wandering around and radiating love, then even the most closed-minded would wake up and a new era could dawn. The Sphinx wanders the world with the light of love, happy and alive, and if you keep your eyes open, one day you can see it.
I love that.
It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I thought it was great because if you've listened to the last season, I'm not listing them as season anymore, but season 9 is all of my past life regressions, a lot of them, and there's one there that involves us. So that one just jumped out to me straight away. What do you take from that? What did you feel? I know you have words at the end of it, but personally, what was the experience when you downloaded or channeled or created all those words? received the vessel of the message?
I had, the way it comes to me is mostly through images. So I had very strong imagery there. And I think it actually came when I had thought something like I would like to have this sort of imagery in something. And it was very, I'm always surprised when the story develops, what comes there, because I don't know it. It's something I don't think it up, I receive it. And what I've found there is, I think, is this the feeling of the light of love is something that is transported with the story, and the idea to have this out in the world, but you have to open up for it, let's say, to see it. I think that's something that comes to me from the story. I actually don't really interpret the stories myself. For me, it's a very, it's more an emotional thing. It's soothing for me. It's warm. It's soothing. And this one specifically is very hopeful. I think it's something that looks like we have this light is freed from the pyramid where it was locked up. So it's freed, it's out there now, and now it actually can be spread and can spread out. But it's still not something that everyone can easily see. It's still something you have to keep your eyes open, so to speak. You have to be open to it. It's still not as openly there and enveloping us that nobody can overlook it. Yeah, so that was what comes through for me.
And once you had channeled all of these stories and you decided to put them into this book, what was the hope that you had, or the intention that you had, the wish that you had for people who are reading these parables?
The first thing was that I thought, I have all these parables, and these are stories that for me all felt very encouraging and very comforting. And maybe I should mention that the time when I did that, when I started that, and I had a very intense, I think, 2 months where I did that every day, was in early March 2023, and that was less than 2 months after my father had died. So I was in a very active grieving process, and there are some parables, I don't think I have all of them in there, but there are some that kind of address also that feeling of grief, not explicitly, but for me it was clear it had to do with that. I had the feeling they are, not only would it be a pity to not publish them because they are just great stories in a way, it's so fascinating for me how they come into being, but also I thought if it feels to me like that, if it feels encouraging to me, if it feels comforting to me, if it feels inspiring to me, then it can do the same for other people. And my idea was actually, it's, these calendars you have where you have a beautiful image and an inspiring quote, and you can look at this every day. And I used to have a calendar with quotes as a teenager, where I then took off the pages that had quotes that I related to most, and then I essentially also wrote them up on little papers and so on. And then I used to look through them one each day and suffer through them all of the time. And I thought it's like that. So that's how the idea came into being, to add the images to each story, that I thought it should be something that people can look at every day and read this little parable and let it sink in, and then have its impact on them, and look at the image, and maybe also the image has an inspiring effect. And if not, it's just an aesthetic thing that comes on top. And then I thought, okay, let's also put in some journaling prompts.
Yes.
For each of the parables. So anyone who wants to go deeper and maybe get more out of this, like we have done right now, it's was more relatively short and superficial. But if you go through the prompts and look back at the story and dive in again and feel into your feelings and all that, emotions, and journal that out, then you may actually get to a deeper level about what it tells you personally. So that was the idea. But then when I started typing them up, I actually found that there's yet another level to it, which I hadn't noticed, because when I was typing them, I noticed that I am getting back into kind of a light trance state. And so I thought, okay, so these parables are actually something that can also put you into that state if you're open to it and open up to it and would like to have that. And I think it's also something a hypnotist could use.
Absolutely. I was just about to say.
So there will certainly be another book, I think, with more of them.
I've got a very strong message coming through now. I know, like, I've already picked up my phone. I'm like, you said you did 77. I can see 288 more coming. And
yeah, I have some more meanwhile. And
that makes it 365. So one a day. And yeah, it really appeals to me. One a day is a story that you can listen to. It takes you into a short trance before you go to bed. Poof, powerful way to go into the dream state at night.
Yeah, I actually thought it would probably be good to have an audiobook on it. And I can probably do it in German myself, but for the English one, I need someone who can do it without my accent and stumbling over words and all that.
Yeah, maybe it's a collaboration between you and Katie.
Yeah, Katie would be great for that. Yeah.
I want to then say the fascinating part about the parable for truth seekers for me is what comes next. When you read the book, there's an offer there from Susanne, which is to channel your own parable. So she will go into the trance state and connect with your energy to produce a parable. And I was like, yeah, bring it on. Let's see. And I love how the cover of your book links into my parable. It was the first thing I noticed. And I was like, I'm on the cover.
Yeah, actually, I thought, why snakes again? Because the cover, and especially the one for the English book, yeah, that was fascinating, your parable.
So I'd like you to read it, because I think it's fabulous. Have you got it there? Or?
Yeah, I have that. That's the interesting thing about that. I'm not the creator of it.
No, but stop. It is a message that comes from source, through your higher self, through the vessel of you of all time. So you are both the creator and not the creator. It's you are source. So you are the creator.
Okay, if you put it that way, yes, that's right. Yeah, I have it. Yeah. I'm really happy that it resonated with you, because, as I said, I was thinking, like, where do the snakes come from again? And is that, what am I doing here? But yeah, snakes. Something is crawling, like in tall grass, but it is shady and humid, like in the jungle. Dark too, at night. There are little snakes moving around, a whole litter of them, with small red tongues that lash out quickly. Quite cute. Slowly they move apart, slithering off in all directions, into the open plain. They take a risk, each on their own special path. Some move into the light, into areas of radiant bright colors under the sun of bright days. Some remain in the darkness, hidden deep down beneath grasses and bushes. But they all follow their destiny, the inner call to diverge. The shadow creatures are threatening to the little snakes that move in the dark. But they sense their brothers and do not lose themselves in themselves and their surroundings as easily as the snakes in the light-colored realms. The dark snakes retain the sharpness of their perception because they need it. They take the difficult, dangerous path and grow into large, colossal beings, true monsters. Their gliding splendor penetrates the dark as if in a dance. Now there is no longer any danger for them, and they deter with their mighty bodies. And so they do their work, each on their own journey, and yet always connected with their brothers. What they do happens in passing as they glide along, killing the occasional rodent on their way. But it is the wandering on the path and the being and growing that determines their effect and ultimately their work. It is doing without doing, elegant, easy gliding, onwards and forwards, always and always, until the end of the world. When the storm rages above them and the lightning is reflected in the scales of their heads and in their eyes, the sheet lightning, and they reunite at the last hour to form a gigantic body that stretches up to the sky. Then the work will be done, and their dance will continue forcefully in the clouds, and their power and force will flow out and spread over the whole sky and pour out through the atmosphere into the whole world, into the shadows of the night and the bright days, the varied colors and the darkness. And everywhere there will be light, and the shadow will flow upwards into the clouds and the storm and dissolve into the elemental force of the primordial ground from which everything is nourished. And the light snakes will dissolve into light, the smaller brothers, and permeating everything in the bright realms of the world below the clouds and the stormy primordial ground in the sky, which feeds everything with its force and power, split by and interspersed with the radiant force of the new light that is in everything. And so the darkness and the light alternate eternally, massing together and expanding in an endless round dance. Your power is immense. Let it continue to work. So that was boom. I tried to create a background that somehow reflects the images I was seeing there.
Yeah, it's when I had the desire to ask you for a parable, I asked for something that would show me a reflection of either where I've been or a message about going forward. And that is both.
Wow.
And what is particularly profound about it is that we've done 100 and, I don't know, where are we up to? 106 podcast episodes so far. And with the work I do, I constantly think, and I share my own past life regression sessions on the podcast, and they've all been dark, very dark. And sometimes it can feel like working in the spiritual community, you can feel very judged because there are people that only wish to talk about the light. And I have specialized in the last few years very deeply into the dark and the subconscious mind, the superconscious mind, to find the depths of the pain of the soul, to heal it, to bring light to it. And what I have discovered is that the soul goes in soul cycles. Okay. And in each soul cycle, you'll have a focus, a theme, something that the soul is trying to learn. But there's always a soul cycle of dark and a soul cycle of light. You are never just the dark, you're never just the light, and you need both to balance out the soul's growth. So that was particularly, and then there's a lot of personal stuff in there that I'm not going to go into, but for me, it was validating my belief in the cycles of the soul and the importance of the metaphor of falling into the darkness, and how we have to be very careful of judging ourselves and others who have fallen into the darkness, because that falling into the darkness is for a purpose. You do it for soul growth. We just have human labels on it.
Yeah, I found that particularly interesting. I find it fascinating how much this relates, because you probably know yourself, when you're sitting there and receiving something, you think, okay, does that make any sense? Is this even fitting? And because you really don't see the background of it. But what I found particularly interesting was that when I received that, I had this image of the little snakes, and then those went off to the light and the bright colors and so on. And I thought, okay, do we go that way? And I said, no, it went with those who stayed in these shadows and in the dark. And we went that way. And we didn't go with the snakes that go into the bright days and all that, which intuitively I would have thought that's probably where we are going, but no, we went to the, and I went with it. And the interesting thing was that, yes, we are used to have negative connotations with dark and shadow and all that, but the feeling that came with it was that these snakes are not, I hope that comes across in the wording, because these snakes are not something bad or anything.
No,
it's completely okay, and it's normal. It's there, it's very natural, and is, and I think that is actually confirmed by, or also confirms what you have said, that this was, so it's a dark imagery, but it's completely okay. That's it. It's completely, it's natural and good, and as it should be. That's how this felt, and I found it quite interesting. And just as a side note, that we also have to be aware of our cultural prejudices sometimes, because obviously shadow is has a connotation with dark and negative and all that in Western cultures. But when you go into the Orient, where you have this very strong sunlight, which is burning and can actually be deadly, then the word shadow has a completely different connotation. There's a linguistic image about the monarch, a good monarch, extending their shadow over the kingdom. And that's nothing negative. That's a good thing. That that's protection. The shadow is protection. So that's a completely different connotation it has. And so maybe that's also helpful for receiving these sort of messages, if you're aware of various options of what an image can mean.
Yeah, and here in Australia we have a very rough, harsh climate. The sun does burn. You need the sun, but you need the shade. But yes, and if you want to take it allegorically in terms of how I've been doing a lot of work in spirit releasement therapy, when I first went into, that's a very dark side of the soul to work with. And it was confronting, and I was afraid, to be honest, to start with, until I had worked enough in this realm to understand that there is a message and a reason why the dark spirits, the negative entities, are working with a soul, and that intention is actually pure and requested by the soul. And it was like, I want to cry when I say that, because it is the dark entities wouldn't be there if you as a soul hadn't requested them. And so they have taken on a mission. They are light. They've gone down to the dark to be an entity of the dark, to provide the awareness and the growth of the soul, so that can then go back into the light. So it was just like, that confirms everything that I've learned in the very difficult work of spirit releasement therapy, because the world thinks of possession and entities and negative beings and ghosts as scary, frightening. I've done something wrong, quick, get it out of me, help, when actually it's all a lesson that you have requested. And what I learned is to be very humbled and appreciative, without bowing down to, but being appreciative for the service that the darkness does.
Yes, makes total sense to me.
It was just a validation.
Yeah, I was so happy when you sent me the email saying, yeah, that's so relevant and all that, because I was really, I haven't done it for a very long time, so it's obvious that I think, okay, is this even
no, I think you have got a very special gift in that area. And so, just to end the podcast, I would really encourage you to go and read those parables, and do be a good student and do the journaling, and take up Susanne's offer. You need to read the book, you need to subscribe to the email newsletter, and then Susanne will send you a personalized invitation to take up her discounted offer. If you don't buy the book, then you can go to a website, but you will pay full price. So there's your incentive.
Exactly.
And last plug, you do have a podcast. You have two podcasts actually on YouTube, one on YouTube, but the one on the screen behind you, the image is Death and Beyond.
Yeah, that's now a podcast. There are 2 more episodes coming out that are already recorded, which I will put on the podcast. That's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, on various platforms. I actually have put it on my website also, and from there you can go to click to the profile page where all the platforms are listed, or you just check it out on your platform. And that's the audio version. Currently it's just extracted from the videos, which I have also on YouTube, and there's one playlist in English and one in German, and 3 things will be continued soon. So we have 8 episodes at the moment.
Okay, fabulous. As always, there will be all the links in the show notes and on my website, where you can click on and follow Susanne in her various social media. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, and we look forward to updates in all of the areas in the future. So thanks again for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. It has been such a pleasure. No.
Und